So, hello and welcome to Happiness Telesummit. My name is Erica Glessing and I'm your host. I have a beautiful guest with me. Good morning, Ashley Stamatinos.
Good morning, Erica.
Yeah, I am so excited to have Ashley on today. You are in for a treat. Ashley has a gift of understanding sensitivity. She's an empath expert. She works with highly sensitive adults and children. Her mission is to empower you to use your sensitivity as a strength. So she founded Amorphe Healing. And this is a platform to teach holistic education, healing to the world. I'm so blessed to have Ashley here. I feel like so many of us have these sensitivities. They give us a lot of awarenesses, and we just don't know what to do with all that information. And it can actually overwhelm us, especially those of us in sort of this happiness genre, this seeking happiness, this allowing happiness, because in that there's an expansion of awareness. In that we can have just too much information and then we can just sort of freak out. So I love this conversation with Ashley, who's also an author of the new book, The Energy of Expansion. So welcome, Ashley.
Yay!
Yeah. Yeah, and we're just going to kind of go with the flow. So why don't we just open up by, um, connect us to the concept of sensitivity as it relates to happiness, and tell us kind of like how, just kind of share with us, connect the dots on how our sensitivity and our happiness can sort of be sort of more like best friends.
Yeah, okay. Well, and let me also tell you just a little bit about how I got so interested in this work as well. I lived in Manhattan, and I actually had moved to Manhattan just a couple days before 9/11. And so I had a really interesting experience as a highly sensitive person living in the mecca of a huge disaster that was going on. And I have been in my life a very happy, very positive, sort of silly person. I have sort of given myself the job in the family to make light of things and to be goofy. So I am a very lighthearted, fun person. And when I moved to Manhattan around 9/11, I had my whole world changed in a really big way. I got really, really sick with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue and chronic pain. I had an infection in my lungs for a long time. I was on crazy strong medications for a long time as well. And I found that I wasn't very happy for a long time. I actually felt like I hit rock bottom at that point in my life. And Western medication, although I know it has a wonderful place in the world, it wasn't helping me. And so I was really seeking out different ways to help my body heal. And Eastern medication, and one of the first people I looked into was Louise Hay, to get healthy and to look into affirmations and being positive in a different way, of starting to be in gratitude for my body and the way that it was working. And that sort of evolution of looking into Eastern mentality and looking at my body from a place of gratitude instead of looking at it from a place of how it was failing me, allowed me to start getting out of that hole of being so unhappy and so unhealthy and so sick. And my body started healing also. And I did acupuncture, and I went to a master healer, and I started healing myself. And this combination of things really started allowing me to get happier. I noticed that one of the biggest reasons that I was really so ill was because of the huge impact of the trauma and the drama and the suffering that was going on around me in Manhattan. I was an emotional sponge. Erica, you know what that's like to be an emotional sponge, right?
I do. I know. It's like I'll walk into a grocery store, or oh, this is a good one. This is a good one. I'll walk into like a place where people try on clothes, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll feel all of the judgments they've had of themselves looking in the mirror, and I'll leave feeling hideous. And I'll go,
Mm-hmm.
and one time this happened, and I actually called one of my friends in Access Consciousness, and I said, what's going on? I was in such a good mood. I was going to get some new, cool stuff to wear, and I left there feeling terrible. And she goes, everyone's energy in that dressing room of disliking their body So that
Yeah.
whole dressing room was filled with energy of people who dislike their bodies looking in the mirror while they were trying on clothing, and
Yeah.
you just sucked it all up into your body, and that's why you were just did a tailspin, because I'd been like so joyous in my
Yeah.
physicality, and I went, oh my gosh, you
But
know.
that's not me. Yeah.
No, and I mean that's a really funny like example, not compared to 9/11. I
No,
certainly
it's a great example.
okay.
Fantastic example. I love that illustration. And by the way, I've had the same thing too. And what's so funny is when you go home from the store after you've tried things on and you feel so uncomfortable and you don't like how you look, but you still purchase it anyway, when you go home and try it on, you feel completely different. You feel
Wow.
completely differently about how it fits on you and how you
Yeah.
look in it because you no longer are surrounded by all of those different thought feelings and emotions of everybody else.
Yeah, right?
It's amazing. And that is such a good
Wow.
illustration of what an empath is. An empath is a person who is highly sensitive and they can feel other people's thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And where they get tripped up is that they so frequently don't have the tools to realize that what they're so acutely aware of about other people and what they're feeling, that it doesn't belong to them. They so
Right.
frequently believe it belongs to them, and
Whew.
that is the source of why empaths are walking around feeling so unhappy and they're feeling so
Mm.
unhealthy and they're feeling
Wow.
so down and heavy. I feel so many people who
Wow.
come to my classes just feel the weight of the world. They so frequently are the caretakers of the world and they're
Yeah.
giving, 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 and they're just taking on so much and not taking
Wow.
care of themselves. And I find that
Ashley,
people
I
who are,
have to tell
yeah.
you, I have to tell you, I just had a huge awareness.
Ooh,
And
tell me.
well, I mean, it's going to seem so obvious, but I was a news reporter, and I remember I've only fainted once in my life.
Okay.
And so I went up and I covered the story, and it was a chemical thing, and it was in this little town, and there'd been like a fire.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd gone up and I'd interviewed some of the people around this event and wrote about it. And I just got the hit. So then that night I drove up to this other town to have dinner with a friend. And I was sitting there at the restaurant and I fainted. And
Oh,
I've never fainted like in my life. And I was only in my 20s, you know, so my body was like rock solid as far as its self
yeah.
is. It was like
Yeah.
it was about as good as it was. I mean, I shouldn't say that, but it was a pretty nice body. And I was like, I fainted, and I just got clarity on how much of all the victim stuff I absorbed, because it
Totally.
wasn't actually anything. It was all their stuff that I would take in, and I
Absolutely.
just got present to what that did to my physicality, and wow, my
Yeah.
goodness, it's like wow, that was a really interesting job that I had to process all those people's stuff.
Totally. Yeah.
All
And,
right, thanks, Ashley.
absolutely. That's a great example.
Oh
I
my
mean,
gosh, I
totally. That was so overwhelming for your senses, probably on every level, taking it in and
yeah,
processing it for them, that you maxed out and passed out.
yeah,
Yeah,
wow,
thank you for that. I mean, it's really interesting to me how many people are striving for happiness as empaths and they're using so many tools and they're trying so hard and they feel not only exhausted from processing so many other people's, stuff, their thoughts, feelings, and emotions, but they also feel exhausted because they're constantly doing so many protection tools and they're doing so
yes,
many
yes,
things and they just feel like it's
yes,
not working. And that's one of the biggest
yes,
things that I see people not only just feel alone, we talked about this on other calls, you and I, that so many of these people feel alone and they don't realize that there are tons and tons and tons of empaths out there, and a lot of people who are empaths or highly sensitive, they don't even realize that that's what they are, that they're empathic. And so they don't even know what tools to look for to actually help them start thriving instead of what I call surviving. So many of these people are just holding on with a little thread to life because they're just surviving. That's where they're functioning right now.
So tell me, I mean, this is a great place for you just to share kind of the characteristics of an empath. And for those listeners who are kind of saying, you know, oh, that might be me, what are some ways they would actually know that this is what's happening for them?
Excellent, yes. So people who are highly empathic, I find, often get burnt out very easily. They would be the type of person who walks into a room, and even though the people in the room are all smiles and it seems like everything's okay, they can tell that there was a fight that just happened or a disagreement. And the energy in the room always is giving them an awareness that something is off. They just know. Empaths will receive information in a couple of different ways. They might receive information, it's an energetic way of receiving, whether they feel it, or sometimes empathic people are so intuitive that they can see the energy of the energy of a room is off, or they might see body language that other people don't see. I know that for me, I have sensory input and energy input on all levels, so I will also hear it. And so sometimes when I walk into a room, let's say that there's a spirit in the room, a deceased loved one, or the energy in the room has really been changed, like I said, like there was a disagreement, my ears will pop. I can tell that the frequency of the room, or even they'll just sort of like start buzzing or something. My ears will also tell me. And so a lot of people just sort of think they have hearing trouble. Well, what if you're hearing, or what if the sensations you're getting in your ears or with your eyes, maybe your eyes tingle or they feel hot or something, what if those are all indications to you to be even more aware of what's going on, because you have so many different ways of receiving information. You can also receive information with taste or with smell. And there's also clear cognizance, which is a clear knowing. Sometimes you walk into a room and you don't see things or feel it, but you just know. You have a clear knowing that something happened in that room. Empaths are also really well known for not being, you can't lie to them. It's because they're so aware that you can try to lie, but they're always going to know that you're telling a lie.
Yeah, I don't know that at all.
Not at all, probably not at all.
No, not at all. Yeah, when someone tells a lie, it's like, it just sounds different to me coming out of someone's mouth. So it resonates differently. And yeah, this is pretty funny in my dating life. Totally. Try it, baby. You might as well say nothing or say the truth, because I'll tell you what, I'm going to know.
Totally. You're not getting past me. Yeah, I mean, empaths also, they can feel with more intensity. So we can taste things with more intensity. We will know if something has, you know, food has spoiled before other people would. We could smell it, or we could taste it, or we just know it. Empaths are usually highly sensitive and are very prone to being interested in the healing arts. They're very interested in self-development, and you know, I just think it's the most fascinating thing studying empaths, especially because I am one, so I have a lot of personal reference to call upon. And my son, my young son, is only 1.5 years, is highly empathic and intuitive, and so it's fascinating for me to have been working with kids for years, even before I became a parent, and then to watch him as he interacts with people and watch how easily overstimulated he gets because of the heightened awareness he has. So that just sort of, you know, gives me even more awareness of how important it is to give myself the opportunity to be out there on different platforms and spread the word about different tools, because so many people don't have the tools and they're just getting burnt out and they're tired and they're unhappy. And so that's why I'm so grateful you have this Telesummit, so we can give people tools and awareness how to utilize their life in a way where their sensitivities can be a strength of theirs, and they can empower themselves to go through life in a way where they can handle anything that comes their way. That's my mission. I want people to be able to feel confident that no matter what comes their way, they can handle it.
I love what you mentioned about the kids because I think when I started doing some of this work and even reading some of your work, Ashley, really gave me. So I think what I used to say when one of my children would come home
Mm-hmm.
and she'd have these sensitivities. She plays a lot of sports, and so she'd
Yeah.
have these. So and so doesn't like me. I was really feeling good, and then she said this, and it brought me down. And
Right.
I used to say things like, not you're imagining it, but
Mm-hmm.
kind of that equivalent.
Right.
Not just kind of like I don't want to say like I don't even know the right word, but just kind of like blowing it off.
Yeah,
And
you
now
weren't.
what? Yeah, and now I say to her, I go, you know what? You probably know something.
Yes.
And I say, you're probably tuning into something that
Yeah.
that person is thinking. And and so now what I want you to do, and I'll just get with her, but I'll sanction that instead of like, I'll say, yes, you're getting an awareness. However, what are you going to do with it? And I'll have this conversation with her. That's a very different conversation. And oh
Mhm.
my gosh, my son is such a sensitive that I said to him, you know why you care so much about your team? Because we were
Yeah.
seeing that as a wrongness. Like, you should just go on the best team. You should just go on the hardest team. You should just,
Mhm.
because he plays, very competitive hockey. And you need to play on.
Yeah.
And now I'm like so aware that he needs to play with people that like him and that he likes. That he
Mm.
has that yummy, warm teammate bond fun thing. That I'm
Yes.
like, oh, it's like such a different awareness when you
Yeah.
look at who they are and you don't try to say, oh, it's not that you say it's not real, it's just that you don't give credence to.
Yeah.
I think in the past, I think I've learned a lot just from, even honestly, just from our interactions.
Yeah, you have stepped into allowance. That's what I would call it. You're just in total allowance of your children, allowing them to be who they are, and you're acknowledging them for the different unique gifts that they have. And you're now willing to see those gifts as gifts instead of things that seem like challenges.
Wrongnesses.
Yeah, wrongnesses, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, so many parents and you and I both will keep uncovering things that we haven't been in total allowance of for a long time. I mean, it's something that, there's so many little parts and pieces to uncover. And it's so cool when you keep asking questions like, how can I be even more allowing of my child, and how can I be even more allowing of the family members around me? And that's the thing that you have recognized, that when
Excuse
you get
me.
into allowance and you acknowledge your children, or you even acknowledge the people around you, your whole life starts flowing with much more ease. I mean, whenever we're resisting or making things wrong around us, we're the ones who are going to suffer the most. We're going to feel the most resistance and challenge and judge. So if we're not judging ourselves and we're being in total allowance, everything changes. Everything starts flowing.
So give us a
Yeah.
tool.
It's a tool. It's an amazing tool to be an allowance, and I think it was really beautifully illustrated how, especially with your daughter, you looked at her situation and you chose to acknowledge it and say, you're probably pretty aware of something. And then sort of asked a question, which I love doing, following up with a question, acknowledging and following up with a question. So cool, you're really aware of this. Now what are you going to do with it? Or what else do
Right.
you know about that?
Right.
How can you use that to your advantage? What else might we uncover about this that will benefit our lives even more? So it's really cool to get into the questions. Also, I just love questions. And I know you're excellent at questions, and you've spent a lot of time working on those. So it's something that's really made a big shift in my life. Especially, when you're parenting and there's a situation that's not working for you, you can just say something as simple as, this isn't working for me. What else is possible here? What else can we do with this? How can we change this?
And immediately I went to the broadening to the like coworker environment. you
Yeah.
know? And I love that because one of the questions I get a lot on Happiness Telesummit is, okay, I feel pretty happy, and then I go to work and it's
Yeah.
like these like sourpusses around me, right? It's
Yeah.
like I feel like this, my spouse, And so maybe just help us, because I feel like that's kind of along the same lines. And for
Absolutely.
to be around those who are going through something challenging for them, what
Yeah.
are some tools for that? I mean, besides just saying, it's not my stuff, which is okay, but I don't know if that's like, maybe there's something else to.
Yeah. What's beyond that? Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. And I tend to think that we as empathic people are high maintenance. It's a little bit of a conclusion, but I own it and I'm an allowance of it. We thrive so much when we use a lot of tools and when we do a lot of things to really keep us in a state of wellness, when we're really caring for ourselves. And so I label that as high maintenance just because I think it's a funny word. I don't have any judgment about it. You don't have to be high maintenance if you're empathic by any means. But it's such a wonderful thing to be in total allowance and not judgment of things like that, where you're like, okay, I have a whole bunch of tools. I'm going to go through these things, and I'm going to keep working with the energy as it comes my way. Or anyway, so back to the work atmosphere. So, so when a person goes to work, I think that one of the things people often are really doing that's creating a lot of problems or a lot of unnecessary resistance and challenge for them is that they're defending their point of view so vehemently. A lot of people feel like they're misunderstood, and so they need to explain where they're coming from, or they need to try to call someone out if they're saying something unkind or being wrong or not honoring who they are. And so one of the things that I think has helped me and has helped so many other people is to really, like we said, be an allowance and not resistance, which means that, what you resist persists. So, a lot of us have heard that term before, but resisting other people is like when you're putting your walls up, when you're defending yourself, there's more to resist against. So those people have more to judge and more to grasp onto or to dig their nails into, more to more space to kind of knock you down if you are defending and putting your walls up. So I think that one of the very best things is to push all of your walls down and to be what I like to call space. It's really the same thing as vulnerability. And a lot of people have a lot of negative connotations or a lot of judgments and conclusions around the word vulnerability. So I just like to call it space. It's really the same thing. It's like when you put all of your walls down and when you allow yourself to be total space, non-judgment, and total allowance, which means that you're walking around and someone says something to you and you look at it and you're like, oh, well, that's interesting, cool. That's how they think about something. It's not how I believe, but that's cool. I know they're in a different place than me. And also acknowledging that anytime someone judges you, it is always, always, always about them. Anytime someone judges you, it's something that they formulated because they're not in total allowance of themselves about that. So that's...
I need to pause that. I really want to draw attention to that.
What do you need to draw attention to?
To when someone judges you,
yes, yes,
it has nothing to do with you. And I
it's
want
always
to just
about them.
really, I feel like if this entire Happiness Telesummit
Yes.
helps one person
Yeah.
allow someone else's judgment to just be there and be an allowance of that judgment and have the pain of that judgment not be present anymore. One person changes like this, I feel like I'm alive.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I know for me that judgment, I just want you to play with that tool a little bit more and deeper. And the reason I'm just asking about it more deeply is because I feel like it's such a game changer.
It is. It is. I believe that, and sort of like you, usually when I'm talking about it, I repeat it like at least 3 times. Like,
Okay.
that because that was kind of a big one.
Did you get that?
Yeah, let me just say it again. Anytime someone judges you, it's always about them. It's where they're not in allowance of them in their lives. So let's look at a work situation. When someone is at work. You know, there are a lot of different kinds of bosses. Let's just assume that if you're in a 9 to 5 kind of job, you probably have a boss, or awesome if you're the boss too. Doesn't really matter. But if you're working with someone else, whether it be on a project and they're your boss or they're your coworker or something, let's say they're giving you a hard time and they're pressuring you. They're making a situation that doesn't need to be so time sensitive. They're pressuring you into a very time sensitive situation. The things that they say to pressure you or judging you, like you're not doing it fast enough, you're not doing it well enough, you're not doing it maybe just how they would do it, they're trying to control you perhaps, that's where they are not an allowance of themselves, because they're having trouble allowing themselves to move through a project at a certain pace, or they feel like if they didn't get it done by a certain deadline, or if they didn't get it done faster, that they would be wrong for it, that they would be not good enough. And whenever you're in a situation like that, when someone is judging you like that, you want to look at, you know, obviously asking the question, where are they not an allowance of themselves? And it's not really your job to fix that. It's just allowing yourself to recognize that the other person is having the internal battle or the internal conflict. And so it's coming out and it's dumping on you. They don't even realize that they're doing it most of the time. A lot of times when people are judging you, they don't even realize that they not only are just judging you, but they're dumping on you. And it's your choice to receive that or not. So when someone is judging you, you don't have to take it on as your own. That's a choice.
I have to tell you this awareness I had. It was so fascinating.
Cool.
It was at a family event, and it was with one of my cousins. And I saw there'd been another relative who's now passed, and she had like heaped judgment on my cousin when she had her baby.
Yeah.
And just heaped judgment on my cousin, heaped judgment on her. And what I saw was that judgment wasn't even that relatives. It was like generations previous.
Right.
And so it was actually, it didn't even belong to the person who was giving the judgment and causing, you know, wrote a really mean letter and all this stuff. And it really, it wasn't her own stuff. The one who was saying all this stuff, it wasn't hers. I actually could see it back in the generations of Catholic guilt. And I could see it back, and I could see it coming from something that wasn't essentially the person who was delivering the judgment. It didn't even belong to them. And so here this other person is getting it and feeling pain and contraction and sadness and loss because no longer had a grandma. I mean, essentially this person just dipped out of her life because of the judgment. Yeah. And I said, you know what? That didn't even belong to her.
Right.
And then the other thing I could see in that vision of that was I could see a jealousy from grandma to cousin. I could see a jealousy because my cousin was just so flippin' beautiful. And it was like, you know, she's 6'1" and her husband's 6'7", and they're just like, and now it's like 35 years later, they have this beautiful marriage, they have grown children, they're just an amazing family. And it was like so fake. It was so fake, and it caused so much pain. But I just love what you just said, because it really sanctions that insight I had. That was just this moment where I just saw it didn't even belong to the person issuing the judgment.
How cool is that? That takes it even a step further. I love it. Yeah, and we can even, and you sort of touched on this too with that same story, that they had almost taken it on like a job. Like it was almost something that, you know, they bought from someone else, and that other person might have bought it from someone else, and so it just keeps getting passed down within a family, and especially as parents. But it doesn't have to be parents. It could be anywhere. It could be in your career. It could be anywhere in your life. That if you're not choosing, and now that you have an awareness, you can choose differently. However, I just mean that now that you have an awareness of what to look for, you can choose to see things differently. And so you will become more aware of when people are judging you and putting things on you, whether they're trying to make you feel guilty or shameful or whatever it might be. and you can recognize it's about them. It has nothing to do with you, and then you can choose to take it on or not, And so it's really cool that it's like a lineage kind of thing. Sometimes people are like, well, they took it on, and now I'm going to take it on, and it's not a logical thing. It's not like you think to do it. It's just that if you're choosing to be really aware and you're asking questions about, hey, does that belong to me? Then you have a bigger awareness about how many of those judgments and conclusions you've created that really aren't even yours.
So when someone is so firm in their judgment of you and they're in that kind of family role with you, like I hear you say rationally, oh, don't take it in, or right, or like don't let it mess up with, don't let it, I want to say the F word even, which I don't say on the Happiness Telesummit, but don't let it mess with you, F word.
They've never heard that
don't
word.
Don't let it do that. So I like hear you say that, but it almost feels like I get this like, take us deeper into that, like show us with your experience what it's like to actually let them have that judgment and not have it stick in our bodies.
Okay, so you also had touched upon guilt, and so let me play that into this as well. So a lot of us who, it doesn't even really matter how we grew up, a lot of people are growing up with their parents, raising them with guilt tactics or shame tactics or blame tactics. And so, even if it's not super obvious, even if it's just a slight here and there, we have sort of a snowball effect throughout our life, and we feel these guilt trips for things very easily. Empaths feel very easily guilty and pick up that kind of stuff very easily from other people. So often we're walking around feeling really guilty, feeling, we don't want to hurt other people. We want to make sure everybody's happy. And people are so frequently, like you had also mentioned, saying, you're too sensitive, or don't be so dramatic, because we are, feeling things with such intensity that it sometimes seems like we're dramatic or we're overreacting, but we're not. We're actually just that sensitive. So an example of all of these things is I had a nanny at one point when my son was very young, like let's say maybe 7 months old or something, and I was telling her how when the day before my son was born, I found out that my father-in-law had stage 4 cancer. Isn't that the most bizarre time to find that out? There's never a good time to find that out. Then he's okay now. But the day before I gave birth, they found this out. And so right, as I had just given birth, and, my son was a couple months old. He was going through chemo and radiation, and he lives in New York and I live in Chicago. So we didn't get to see my in-laws, and they didn't get to meet their grandchild for months. Probably we didn't fly out there to New York with our son until he was like 4 months old or something. So I was telling my nanny about this, and she started going into, which was so interesting, she started going into how awful it was that they had met him, and why didn't they make more of a effort to see him, and and it was so interesting because I was looking at this person who was being very judgmental about it and going into the shoulds and how it was wrong, and I looked at it, and for a moment I wanted to go into anger and blame, like, how could you blame? Why would you say that? And that would have been me being something that wasn't in total allowance. That would have been me picking up on her judgments as if they were real, and not recognizing that what she was judging was about her, and it had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with my father-in-law. So in that moment, I paused for a second, which is always a good idea, which is another tool. Pause before you react. Always helpful. So I asked myself, if I wasn't feeling angry, what would I be aware of? And I'm so grateful I asked that question, because in that moment, I became aware that this person had almost no tools. And so she was judging as a way of being supportive of me. That was actually her way of being kind. And so for me to resist it wasn't kind. So I actually chose to, in that moment, say, oh, wow, well, thank you so much for your point of view. Like, I get it. It was unfortunate that, my father-in-law couldn't meet him, but he did. So thanks for your point of view. Instead of resisting it and reacting, I went into total allowance of those judgments, and I didn't let them stick to me. I didn't let them hit me. I just let them flow past me, flow through me.
Oh,
That's
nice.
the difference. That's being an allowance. Is people can throw their judgments at you and they won't hit you if you're in allowance. If you're in resistance and reaction mode, they hit you, they stick to you, they weigh you down. You're going to be weightless if you're in allowance and non-resistance and you're pushing your barriers down. And you're going to see things that you never saw before about the beauty of things. Even judgment, like, I don't think judgment is something that I would like to do. However, I recognize that some people aren't in the same place. And so they're going to be in judgment, and I'm not even going to make that wrong. I'm going to say, cool, awesome, you're in judgment. You're trying to, help me, and you're trying to be kind to me. And so I'm going to receive that. Thank you. It's interesting looking at things from a different perspective like that.
Wow, that's so fun.
Yeah, so that's what it looks like. Being an allowance is not letting other people dump on you. That's where the choice is. The choice to look at things and be an allowance and pushing your barriers down and being space is really where the magic happens. And like I had said earlier in this conversation, people come to my classes and they're exhausted because they've been trying all these techniques and these things, all these protection mechanisms that they've learned of putting their walls up, putting barriers up, and setting all these boundaries and bringing in all of these, different spirits and stuff. And I want to say I don't think any of that is wrong. I just think that if you're in a place where you're an empath, where you're a highly sensitive person and that's not working for you, where you're still getting burnt out, where you're not consistently feeling good, then I would totally suggest you go into a place where you go into non-resistance, non-reaction, where you go into being in vulnerability, where you be in space. And that is where the magic happens for me, at least. And I don't take on other people's stuff, and I'm living in a place where things flow through me and around me. And that's the difference. That's how you get out of burnout mode, by stopping the ability to take on other people's judgments as if they're your own.
I love that. And I want to just follow up, if you don't mind, because this is something that we talked a little bit about letting you mess with me, and I'm just so joyful right now to engage you in a conversation.
Yeah.
I have a lot of embarrassment when guys like my body.
Okay.
Or women. So if I walk into a room or I walk into anything, and I feel that kind of lust or attention or attraction, that is just something that, since I remember at age 13, 14, I would go to the library, and I remember I loved the library. I'd go and just get my stacks of books. And I can remember guys being attracted to me, even at that young age, and I remember carrying my books to cover me so that, like, I couldn't perceive their attraction to me.
Right.
And I think that's something that's like, okay, now I'm in my 50s, come on.
Yeah.
What is it about that sort of, like, when someone looks at you and feels that sexuality feeling? What is it that we can bring as an empath to just kind of be cool with it and, like you said, like, use all these tools you've been talking about?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I thought of was, immediately, all of the judgments that you have about your body, how many of those belong to you? Because you've probably picked up so many judgments and conclusions and wrongnesses and, guilt about, your body for so long. Maybe it's been your whole life that, first of all, you want to go into, every time you have any sort of judgment about your body, like, I'm too sexy, or I'm not sexy enough, or I have too much weight, or I have too little weight. Ask yourself, and it doesn't matter who it came from, but just ask, is that even mine? And if it's not yours, return it. Let go of it. And I know that may sound easier said than done for some of you who aren't used to that tool. I just urge you to work with it and play with it as much as possible, because something like 98% of our thoughts, feelings, and emotions don't originate from us. So we'll walk around with all this heaviness and all this judgment about our bodies and the wrongness of our bodies and how we shouldn't feel joyful in our bodies and happy, even that sometimes people walk around with a very strong conclusion and judgment about how being happy is wrong and that it makes other people uncomfortable. And so who does that belong to? And is that working for you?
Yeah, I make people uncomfortable because I'm always like dancing in my car.
Yeah.
I'm always like dancing and moving and laughing, and my kids are sometimes like, "Mom!" And I'm like, you know what? This is who I am. One thing I say, this is
Totally.
one thing I say
I'm in
actually.
total allowance of me dancing in my car, so take it or leave it.
One thing I used to joke about way before Access, I'm like, they don't pay my bills.
Right on. I like that. So the other thing is, when you are, looking at situations where you're uncomfortable with the way that other people might be responding to you, remember that what you put your attention on is what you create, right? So if we're putting our focus on looking at our discomfort with things and how someone might be judging us and how, a situation might not work out, we're obviously putting attention and focus onto something that's going to expand and grow into much more discomfort. And also remember that the person, anybody around you, they pick up on what's in our head. And then they pick up on it as if it's their own, and we do the opposite. So what if you being uncomfortable with your body was actually because you're so aware of all the other people around you who are uncomfortable with their bodies? What if it was just about that?
Right, right. And
That's
that feels so resonant. That feels so resonant because,
yeah.
in essence, like around my kids at my house or whatever, we're just like,
Yeah.
poof, like we just. Poof.
Yeah.
In fact, I joke with them about everything, like, and I love their little bodies as their bodies are growing and they're all teens now,
Yeah.
so their bodies are all different shapes now, and it's like,
Yeah.
I just love their bodies. I'm like, oh, you have the cutest body, and they're like,
Yeah.
Mom. I'm like, look at your cute butt. They're like, Mom. And I'm like, yeah, do they even know how cute they
I know.
are? But that's
I
not the
feel that.
norm.
Totally, yeah. And so, we are masterful at being in resistance most of ourselves. So, I mean, we're using this awesome tool of being in total allowance and total vulnerability, with others, but we must also be reminded to be in total allowance of ourselves. And really, if we choose to be introspective and look at ourselves and all of the places we're resisting and reacting to ourselves, think how much all of our interactions with other people will start to ease up and have more flow if we start to pick out all the places where we have discomfort in our lives. And those just become, instead of problems, they just become these awesome indicators to us of where we could work more, where we could look at those places, or not work, where we could play, where we could look at them. Yeah, it doesn't have to be work, it could be fun. So if you look at some of those places like you illustrated, where sometimes you have the discomfort with your body or, the judgment of your body, or really maybe you're just being so aware of other people's discomfort with their body, what if those were just indications for us to look at, how can I be more allowance in that place in my life?
Yeah.
How can I remove the resistance and the judgment?
I would like to just take you a little bit fast forward into like a different space in reality and kind of what happens in your life. What kinds of changes do you see? Because it's just phenomenal. The changes like when you work with people and you
Yeah.
help them through this. And I know you've seen this firsthand. So just give us a little insight into kind of that that juicy place where reality is just so different.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So I find that on a basic level, which is not so basic at all, but there's a huge scale here. At the sort of basic level, what I see is so many people are feeling so alone, like no one else understands them, where they have to hide their gifts and their talents and their abilities, which is what I truly believe sensitivity is. I think it's such a gift that is sometimes so untapped. I find that because they hear me speak or they hear someone else speak, they realize that that sensitivity is a strength, they start to step out and they start to share their gift a little bit more with the world, and they feel so much more well received because they aren't judging themselves as much as wrong or needing to hide. And what blossoms because of that is so massive. When people are willing to start blossoming, and when they're willing to start sharing their gift a bit more, or maybe they just open the floodgates and they just shine their gift to the world, what happens, I see, is that they start to be able to receive more. And so many times people are so afraid of receiving it all, money, relationships, happiness. They're so closed off to receiving joy of any kind because they feel so overstimulated and so overwhelmed by the world that almost anything that stimulates them and overwhelms them, they shut themselves down and close themselves off to it because it seems like it's going to harm them or hurt them. So I always say to people, one of the worst things you can do is to shut down your gift and to close off your sensitivity, because you're going to go down a path where it might feel temporarily better, but it is only going to make you feel boxed and closed off and not authentic. So when they start to lift the veil and allow themselves to truly be seen for who they are, they start to step into their destiny. They start to step into their goals more. They start to live their life feeling more authentic, more like them. And, something we've spoken about before as well, and it's one of your books, which is so beautiful, is they start to be able to receive, just in general. They start to be able to receive everything they ever imagined was possible in life, and their lives start thriving, more opportunities, they become more successful in any area of their life, more successful parents, more successful in business, more successful with life, with happiness, with everything, whatever that definition may be. I just mean that they start expanding, another one of your books, expanding.
Your book. Own it, baby.
Expanding, receiving, and becoming happy. There you go. I'll just get them all. But it's so beautiful because I get the most wonderful emails and messages from people so consistently that when they're using the tools and getting out of judgment, the tools are all just these wonderful ways of implementing life skills to allow yourself to feel strengthened and be able to handle anything. They feel like their lives thrive and they're able to truly be them and to be seen. And as a result of that, because they're being themselves, their energy unlocks the people around them. And what so many people don't realize is that when you're working on yourself, that is such a gift to everyone around you. And I'm sure you know that.
So how can we work with you further? Tell us a little bit. I can see your domain name right below your name. So tell us a little bit about a gift or package offering, whatever you have that you want to share with our beautiful audience today on the Happiness Telesummit.
Oh my goodness. Well, so absolutely, I'm so excited you asked me that. I definitely am offering something. I'm offering a series of these 10 juicy tools that you can empower yourself as a sensitive person. And there are videos, and there's MP3 giveaways and PDFs, so there's all this juicy stuff that you can have, that you can take away, download, and have forever at your disposal, so that you can really step up your life to a whole new level, so that you can no longer be the emotional sponge, so that you can handle social situations gracefully with ease and feel confident stepping into social situations and know that you can handle anything, really. There's some really cool tools that'll really help you to be able to help yourself even after you leave a social situation, and if you feel sort of dumped on, how to get rid of that, how to feel full and like yourself once again. So that's something I'm offering, and I hope you'll pick that up. Of course, I wrote a chapter.
Actually, wait a second for that. I have to tell you that for the listeners, that working with Ashley on this concept, just learning from her, for me, I don't know. I think we first started talking was early January, and my life has changed so much since we just connected in that space of sensitivity being a strength. And the other piece is for any parents that this work is phenomenal because it's very likely your children are highly sensitive.
Right.
It's very likely because you're listening here. You're still on our talk. So there's something in you that's like really saying this information's yummy is to really get this package, because even if just like 5 things stick in your life, it will change your life. Your life experience will change, I mean, just forever. I
Yeah.
mean, it really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, family gatherings. That was the big aha for me. That was the big aha, was when I go to my family gatherings, and instead of being concerned about me not being the perfect weight, which has been, an issue in my family for centuries, I think, I would go and I wasn't thinking about that anymore. I was thinking about how could I be of service to family, going through a funeral, going to different events, and I would just focus on what can I do to be of service in my family environment going through a tough time. And I let go of all the judgments, and then it's just transformed everything. So thank you
Yeah.
so much, and I just really encourage people to go right now. It's on the thing. Go work with Ashley. Sorry, what else?
Yeah. Yeah, and I used to feel very uncomfortable at family gatherings, and I would dread them, and I no longer do, and it's the best gift ever. I mean, that might be, even if that's just the one thing you get out of the package I have to offer. I mean, think how much more ease you'd have in your life if you didn't dread family gatherings, because you felt like you knew how you could handle them in a way that worked for you, and you could leave feeling better than when you arrived. How about that? Wouldn't that be a
Yeah,
completely different way of living?
amazing.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I'm glad you brought up the family stuff, because I agree. It's a big one, and the tools will absolutely help you with that. So yeah, I hope that you
yeah,
pick that up as well. I would love to have you do that. One other thing is, if any of you are wondering how empathic you really are, and where you find yourself within the levels of empathy, I have a quiz that I have offered for anyone who wants to take it, and it's on the homepage of my website, omorphehealing.com. So you can take the quiz, how empathic are you, and then you'll get the results right away to show you what level, where you rank within that, and that'll give you a deeper understanding about, how to handle your empathy, which will be really fun. I also have a lot of really fun giveaways and stuff on my website, so if you want some other fun stuff, please go there. And, I'm
thank
on
you,
YouTube and
Ashley.
Facebook and everything, so you
Thank
can
you,
find me
Ashley.
anywhere.
Thank you so much, and maybe let's just tune into the audience one last time and see if there's another message that might be showing up for you to share, to kind of just kind of, I don't know, is there one more message that would like to be expressed?
I keep getting something about honoring kids, the highly sensitive and the psychic kids. I think that I'm so aware of such a huge wave of new children that are coming in, and I've been able to really telepathically speak with a lot of these kids, and so it's really been fun for me to speak with some nonverbal kids and some kids who seem to be having struggles with life because they're so sensitive. It's hard for them to manage or handle it. And it really ties in with the subject of high sensitivity because they're so highly sensitive. And so, again, honoring those gifts and being in total allowance of them is really cool. A lot of parents get really into fear. And so if you find that you're a parent who has a child who's really highly sensitive and it scares you, or it feels like it's beyond what you are capable of helping them to develop, which you probably aren't because they chose you, they knew you could handle them, ask yourself, if I was not feeling afraid right now, what would I be aware of? You can ask yourself, how can I be in total allowance of my child or the children that I'm working with? What can I be aware of that I haven't yet acknowledged that would allow me to feel empowered to be a better support for them, or a better help for them, or a better even advocate for them necessarily? That could be something that could be helpful. So to just
Right,
be in total allowance and non-resistance, and to get yourself out of fear so that it's not covering up your awareness or your potency, so that
right,
you can
right.
really see what's going on. It's just a really cool phenomenon that's going on right now. You're probably very aware of these aware kids.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if we start there, I could go on for like a
I
whole
know.
other 45 minutes, because I
We'll
found
do another interview.
I know I did get a little tiny glimpse of um, trusting the knowing of the child.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That showed up for me when you said that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
as opposed to trying to get them to bend to your knowing.
Totally. I love that. Yes. Yeah, and sometimes I find that it's cool to ask, have I given my child permission to outshine me?
Oh.
How cool is that? Some people
Oh.
feel the need to be the parent where they know more, they have more experience. Well, if we're these infinite beings, we have access to infinite information, right? Well, there's no like knowing more than the other person. There's no competition there. So what if we were just in total allowance of them being these brilliant minds who knew so much and we could learn from them?
I
And they,
love
of
it.
course, would learn from us as well. But what if we could allow that reciprocation to be total fluidity like that?
Wow. That is
Yeah.
a beautiful thought. Thank you for joining us today. The package is right here. I really recommend that you work with Ashley if it feels like a good fit for you and keep getting deeper into your happiness. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you so much, Erica, and thank you all for being a part of this.
Mm.